One. Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of the UK Connection, alongside the stars of the show, Mr. Simon Bray and Mr. Steven Reid. Yes, indeed, you guys are the stars of the show. Come on. Do you know that I got what's happening, fellas? I got a message from someone today, sent in a little donation through the Ko-Fi and said, you guys make my week every other week when you, Simon, and Steven get together. Those two guys are outstanding. And I love when they do these little kind of UK references of things between the two of them, and you just sit there like you have no idea what they're talking about, but you're such a good trooper for taking it. I'm like, yes, indeed. I said, I know. I am befuddled by at least 5 or 10 minutes of dialogue during every episode, but that's okay because it's all part of the fun. And I am a good sport about that. So yes, indeed.
That's
So what's up,
absolutely
guys?
smashing, terrific, lovely.
I was just going to say, I wish that I'd managed to squeeze in a reference to Pigeon Street now, but there you go.
So before we get started on our look back to 2010, which is a very fun exercise, we've got our little bit of business to take care of beforehand. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Simon.
Oh, beer, yes, yes.
Yes, come on, beer, of course.
Given A, how very late you were tonight, and B, how you absolutely went on off on one for about 15 minutes about something else prior to the show, I've already been tucking into mine.
Oh, that's broken my protocol.
I know.
I mean, look at that. I've poured mine and the head has died. It's been that long.
Oh dear, such
I
is
don't know if
life,
you guys
eh?
saw while we were chit-chatting before, I took a sip of mine too. So
Yeah. So anyhow, mine is called The Adventures of Mr. Malty. Yeah, can you see that?
look, wow, I love that.
So it's a gift
I
all the way from
love that.
Spain.
Oh, now,
Actually, sorry.
I was just going to say, did that possibly come out of one of these beer collection
I
boxes?
think it did, but it was donated to me by somebody.
Right. I only asked
Doesn't
because somebody was
yeah.
kind enough, one of my daughters was kind enough to send stuff to me at the end of last year out of one of these boxes. And that was in the review magazine that came with it. And I looked at it and thought, that looks excellent. So tell me it's
And,
excellent.
and indeed it is. It's a super sexy 4.289 out of 5. But you want to know what Mr. Maltese really like, don't you? Well,
Do.
apparently he exhibits a harmonious blend of aromas and flavors, including roasted malt sweetness, dark chocolate ganache, toffee, hints of coffee, and even dark fruit undertones of raisins and plums. A subtle balanced alcohol warmth and hot bitterness adds complexity and balance to every sip, and I can confirm that it absolutely does. And yes, it looks a bit like Mr. Potato Head, doesn't it? Or
Does a bit.
one of
So
his.
does it taste of these plums?
It certainly doesn't taste of his plums, no, and it certainly doesn't taste of potato. So, yep, it's a Baltic poacher, and
Well,
uh,
That
it
looks
makes
delicious.
sense.
Yeah, that looks great. When you first show the can, I was like, is that like based on a comic book character or something like that? But yeah, cool, nice. Good to hear. It's got
okay.
some coffee flavors in there.
I don't have coffee flavors in mine. I'm pretending it's summer here. We actually tells you about we weren't recording at the weekend. I think it's meant to rain at the weekend. It was sunny here today. I remember that thing in the sky. So I am drinking from the 71 Brewing Company here. They are from Dundee in Scotland, and I'm having a Hop Rockin' Beats Hazy Session IPA is what I'm having. I'm having a summer drink. Is what I'm
Isn't
having
that
here.
a Chemical Brothers reference?
Is it?
Sure it is, yeah. Block
Okay,
Rocking
I knew
Bass.
that. I did know that.
Look at me knowing stuff about the last 30 years of popular
Check,
music.
check you out. Absolutely. It's as well we're doing a show from 15 years ago, whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
yes, it looks like, as I've already shown, it looks like this in the glass. It's a waste of my 71 brewing glass, kind of. No, doesn't matter. Total waste of the actual fact I've got a glass from the brewery here. Can't see it. No, you kind of. But
A
there
little
we
bit,
go.
a little bit.
But yeah, it did have a lovely big frothy head on it at one point. It doesn't now. Oh, but it's very citrusy, very hoppy. Very nice. Yeah, it's not a winter beer, which is clearly where we are right now. But it's very nice, very refreshing. Thoroughly enjoy that. Did you score yours, Simon?
I was just gonna.
Yes, 4.289 or some shit that I made up.
don't believe that for a second. You've written all that down. This is a solid kind of 3.75. This is definitely, I would drink this again. Very good.
Cool. Well, I picked up some more from the Great Left Hand Brewing Company. This is a French toast milk stout. And it is, what can I read? A brunch-inspired brew with notes of maple syrup, vanilla, and rich caramel malt, 6% alcohol by volume. And it looks kind of like this. I have it in my Newcastle Werewolf glass. It's nice and dark. Very vanilla aroma. Oh, that's pretty delightful. It's got a little stouty bitterness on the back end, but little hints of chocolate, a little bit of maple syrup, a lot of vanilla. This is very good. 4.0 out of 5. Very good.
I'm going to have to up my game here. I've looked at both of yours and thought yours are both better than mine. It's definitely, yeah. This is fine, but I think I've been beaten thoroughly by you two.
Well, that to me, that's I very rarely drink that kind of beer in the wintertime. I've been on stouts and porters now since probably like November. So
I have for a good
about a month
as
and
well.
like, all right, enough. Give me a fucking Pilsner. I'm done. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I've been the same. It's been all dark beers for me for a while, so I just looked at that in the fridge today and thought, and it's lovely and it's good, but it does feel a bit odd to be drinking it on a dark night. But there you go.
Yeah. So, as we said, we are revisiting our top 10 lists from 2010. So it's now 2024. So it was a long time ago. And when Simon first brought this up not that long ago, we figured this would be kind of really interesting to go back and see what we thought all those years ago on the webzine were our favorite albums of the year. And if we were to go and re-listen to all of them now, how would our top 10 stay exactly the same? Would we rearrange that list at all? So that's basically what we've done. We've gone back and re-listened to our top 10 and we've made any changes if we look at these albums a little bit differently all these years later. And by a show of hands, how many folks here have albums in your top 10 from back then that you hadn't listened to until recently?
Yeah. Yeah, it was an interesting exercise in that way. There was genuinely maybe one where I had to kind of go, so how does that go again? Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So I'll turn it over to Simon. So Stephen, do we want to give how we rank these?
Yeah, I think that we should maybe kind of go through how we ranked them at that time and kind of talk about what they are, because there are albums certainly in mind that people will know, and one or two that they might not, I would guess. So kind of give a brief summary. And then, I don't know, at that point, maybe we can talk about what we would have done if we were ranking them now. And then afterwards, we can talk about anything from outside of that or a different way of looking at it once we've all done that.
Cool. All right. So Simon, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Okay, right. Yes, 2010. The first year that we all together did this ranking exercise. So, woohoo. Yes. 2010 was a fairly shitty year. So, for me personally, which is why there's only 20. If for those of us who are playing along at home, get onto the website, have a look. There's only I only did a top 20. I've checked, and the following years I did a top 75 and a top 80. So I got my shit together for the years after this. But 2010 was a really shitty year, very very shitty year. It's the year that my mum did die. It's the year that Mrs. Simon nearly died, and other really terrible stuff happened. And I've always found in my life, when bad shit happens, the first thing out the door for me is music, which is weird.
Okay.
Given that I listen to music all the time. I remember when my dad died, I didn't listen to anything for ages. So yeah, that's why there's only 20. But to the 10, shall we, kids? Let's 10 it up, shall we? I'm quite happy with my 10, but I am gonna shell one of them out, and I will replace it, despite what I said before we started. Okay, so yes. So these I actually do listen to. My 10 was Avantasia, Angel of Babylon / the Wicked Symphony, because Avantasia were like that year. And I like these records, but I think this is where I began to fall out with Avantasia. bring back Ed Guy. That's what I'm saying. I really like early Avantasia to be to buff, but solid, solid. You know, but mm, for me, right. Number nine, and this was a big surprise. Big surprise. A, that I'd ever listened to it, and B, that I put it at number nine was James LaBrie's Static Impulse.
Oh, yeah.
And I said at the time, I know some can't get past the extreme vocals, but it's good to hear Jimmy on some short songs. Really is, isn't it? Good to hear him on short songs. Yes, indeed. Yes, if only he'd talk in between the songs, because he sure as shit didn't the one time I saw Dream Theater. But I've gone back and listened to that, and loads. It's a very, very good record. I like it a lot. It's kind of almost like soil work or something like that, or it's kind of Gothenburg style melodic death metal, which is not what we
Really?
used to. It's a
But
really good
the whole
solid
thing,
record.
the whole album is like that.
Yeah, he doesn't actually do all the singing.
Yeah. Well, I gathered that when you said growly vocals and things, because I had the Mull Muzzler album. Was that his first solo thing that he put out? And it was okay.
Yeah,
And then I don't think I bothered with anything until the more recent one, and that was because Paul Logue was involved from Eden's Curse, and that's a more acoustic kind of thing, and I
Yeah,
really
that's
like that.
good.
It's something different.
He
But
did one before
I'm
that one, which was very good. I forget what the name of it was, but
yeah,
yeah.
there was one that was called Mull Muzzler, but I think that was maybe it was a solo thing, but it was also maybe the band name. Can't quite remember. I didn't like that.
I'm happy with this choice. I'm good. I'm also happy with my number eight, which I showed the other week, Black Moist Night, Autumn Sky, and as I so correctly said, probably not as good as its predecessor, Secret Voyage, and I even said at the time that I liked the Kinks cover of Celluloid Heroes, which is unusual
Great song.
given the lack of Kinks in my collection.
Oh, I like the
Um, but don't dislike them. It's one of those bands I've never got round to.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah, only so many hours in a day. Okay,
Mm.
and my seven was Cradle of Filth, darkly Venus Aversa. Um, I think one of the really interesting things about going through this exercise, A, is how very, very badly I store my shit, and B, um, I didn't realize I like Cradle of Filth as much as I do. Got so much Cradle of Filth hiding at the back of my CD collection, which goes back, 2 or 3 rows of stuff that you pull stuff out and move stuff around, and there they are. And this is really, I've so much enjoyed this. The dog has been having extra walkies whilst I get to it because it's a concept album. Yay! Yay. I mean, I can't always tell what the concept is because I can't always tell what he's saying, but I love the kind of like cinematic nature of the tunes, and the guitar sounds great. It really is a sexy guitar sound on this record. It really, really is. This would be much higher up. I know. I've never understood, mainly because I have no friends, why you read about Cradle of Filth, it's kiddie metal, that sort of thing. Doesn't doesn't sound like fucking Bon Jovi to me or anything like that. But hey, there you go. Absolute. Thoroughly enjoyed. Um, Not revisiting it because I have listened to it fairly recently before we did this. I have no idea why. I went on a filth kick. Yeah. I didn't realize I owned so many. Wow.
They have a lot of
Pleasant
albums too.
surprise. Pleasant surprise. My six is Justice by Molly Hatchet. Yes, I know it's not really them. I know. I really do. And I know that the album that comes out this year won't really be them, but I'm almost confident I'm going to like it. But yeah, really, really solid. If you put it out under a different name, you go, that's solid. That sounds a bit like Molly Hatchet. It's really good. Yeah. Um, just yeah, solid. Just on the edge, kind of on the edge of Southern Metal. Um, yeah, happy with it being in the 10. Happy. Not that keen on the song American Pride, to be fair. I think there came a point where they tried to shoehorn the words hell and yeah into every song. But beyond that, really good. The guitar playing is exemplary throughout. And I've been unable to find this on streaming services, so hopefully it's now worth loads and stuff like that. Yeah, my five, which would almost certainly be my one or two now is The Promise by Bruce Springsteen.
That's a good one.
The Lost Sessions. Yes, Stephen.
No, I was just going to say, I find that an interesting choice. And I find it an interesting choice because hold up your The Promise. Okay.
Doing it.
He's on it. See, I I was silly and I bought this thing. Okay. So to me, this wasn't a new album. So when I went through my lists, I marked this as a kind of compilation-y retro sort of, because looking at it now, this would be in my top 10, not Darkest Edge of Town, but The Promise. But I never even contemplated that being a 2010 album, but I suppose it is because it's the first time it was ever released. So,
Yeah.
but because I got it in this box thing, I just kind of looked at it and went, old album.
Did that come with the Darkness on the Edge of Town album as well, or?
Yes, it's got
Right.
live stuff and documentaries, and so it is a retrospective release.
But
But
this is just the stuff that they didn't release. By God, it's good. Which is weird because Darkness on the Edge of Town is not my favorite Springsteen album. It's a good album. It's a really good album. It's not my favorite. And you thought, well, if that's the actual album, what they're gonna. It's just fucking great. Yeah. If you like Bruce, it's really good. It's just like Bruce-tastic, I think is the word that we're looking for. Yeah.
Always throughout his career, always had a lot of great leftover stuff that they never used on albums. And stuff like some of his leftovers are better than other artists' entire catalogs. I mean, it's kind of like the Jethro Tull thing all over again, right? There's just these certain few bands and artists that just they would go into the studio, record so much stuff, and then pick out what they feel is the best, and they would hold on to the other stuff. Right. Whereas you had lots of other bands would go in, they're like, all right, we're working on 8 tracks. That's the album. There's nothing left. Right. But Springsteen was never like that. He always went and recorded all sorts of stuff.
Or with Springsteen, he maybe even had the more annoying habit, if you were close to him, of giving it away. So it wasn't even just a case of he put it away in a cupboard somewhere. He quite often gave those songs to other people to go do.
Yeah.
If you were around about him at the time, you were just kind of going,
yeah,
what are you doing? But yeah, him and Tull are a really good example. There are lots of bands that put out albums with lots of bonus tracks and demo stuff and outtakes, and you kind of go, I'll listen to that once and put it away.
Yeah.
And somebody like Springsteen does it, you kind of go, oh, look, it's a new album, because it is a new album. It feels like an album, and that is an album in itself. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Great choice, Simon.
Yeah. Thank you. What I also got round to thinking about whilst doing this exercise is how I listened to music back in 2010, which must have been almost exclusively through my classic iPod.
Okay.
And in many ways, when my classic iPod died, I was completely fucked. I just had this like hard drive with 60,000 songs on, some of which that was the only place I've got it, and there's no other real way to play them, to be honest. So thank goodness for streaming. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But yeah, which explains why I think also why I can't show and tell some of them apart from my terrible system, which I'm going to do nothing about. Absolutely. Although I did spend the afternoon alphabetizing my cassettes this afternoon, which
step in the right direction.
Sad AF, as the young people don't say. Yeah. My 4 is Firewind's Days of Defiance, which probably would go down a little bit because I really like the Premonition. That's my favorite. That's my go-to Firewind album. But Days of Defiance is good. As I think we said when we talked about Firewind, all Firewind is good. Yeah. The one that made me go, Simon, I have no idea why the remake of Battle Hymns by Manowar is number 3. What the fuck? I mean, I know I needed happy shit in 2010, and nothing makes me go more than a bit of power metal, to be fair. But what the heck? No.
Your exact words back in 2010 was still fabulous.
Oh, you've been reading this shit.
I'm looking right at it.
I haven't read your shit. as a collection of songs, I think I'm right.
Yes.
Why,
Yep.
why,
Yep.
why, Delilah? Why? Yeah. Okay. So my two is Therion, Citra Ara, reliably excellent. I stand by that. I've listened to that a lot recently. Um, thing about Therion is though, I think they just changed the member right now. Um, you never know who you're going to get. I mean, there is a consistency of sound, but you just think, really? Again? Just got used to you. And you've gone. But
They're,
well,
they're one of those bands that, and I don't like using this turn of phrase about bands that I quite like, but they slowly disappeared up their own arse for a period of time. It all
mm,
got very, very pretentious. Moi. But you know what I mean? It really did kind of,
yeah.
God, they're one of those bands, something I say more and more these days. When I was listening to the albums after this, not necessarily right after this, I was sitting there listening and thinking, if this was by a band that I'd never heard of before, would I even be putting this on? Would I be sitting through some of this full classical poetry that I'm getting? It was a bit odd at certain points.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I liken them and other bands of their ilk, which won't come to mind, to Doctor Who. Like them up to a point, and then suddenly they started playing with their own mythology and shit, and you think, just play
That
the.
sounds like such a euphemism.
Nope, it doesn't. You're wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, my number one, my number one, which what clearly Pete knows because he's like obsessed with me, is I can't find the album, but I can't find the T-shirt. The T-shirt fits 14 years later. How cool is that? Well, you can't see me though, but yeah, Legend of the Shadow King. And I know exactly why I like this because it is insanely happy music. Holy shit! There's a song. There's a sing song about Merlin. Whoa! How cool is that? You know it makes sense. You really do. And I saw them live that year, and they were absolutely terrific. And yeah, hadn't listened to it for ages though, and I really like Freedom Call. Yeah, but this particular one, I haven't listened to it for quite a while. But this morning, I've given everything a listen over the past couple of days. Sorry, it was this afternoon. I was driving down the M6, and I thought, oh, yeah, if you saw a strange fat blonde haired man driving down the M6 this afternoon, giving it some of that shit, that was me, and thoroughly enjoying it. And I'm relatively happy with it being number one. I mean, it doesn't have as much substance as that, but for happy join us, it really works for me.
Well, I'm going to embarrass myself here, Simon. And do you know what? What's going to happen is one of you two are going to go and check the website and say, "But Stephen, you've reviewed one of their albums," because that's the way the world works. I don't think I've ever heard that band.
No,
No, they're not out of,
I got a
not on
couple of those.
purpose. I just don't think I've ever heard them. It looks like I need to rectify that.
Wasn't paying attention there because the dog's just snuck out to go do his doggy stuff.
I'm just saying, I don't think I've ever heard Freedom Call in my life.
Oh, they're tremendous.
Well, as I gather, I need to rectify that. It's not on purpose. I
Do you
just,
like Dream Evil?
absolutely.
Then you will like the call.
Okay, I shall rectify that. Okay, so this was I mean, Simon came up with this idea, and it was one of those things that as soon as it was suggested, I kind of thought, oh, this is going to be lots of fun. This is going to be very interesting. It's kind of brought a few things home to me. One is, and it sounds like a complaint, and it's not meant that way because we are fortunate enough, or have been, depending on what's happening in life, to listen to an awful lot of music because there's just so many releases come your way, and you review things, and you buy things, and you sample things, and all of the way that the world works these days. And sometimes you go back and you do look at these lists, and you kind of go, "What is that again?" So
Yeah.
it's not quite as bad as that. There's nothing on my 10 that made me go, hmm, so who be them? But there were a couple of albums that I thought I really need to listen to. I've listened to all 10, but I really needed to listen to some of these to make sure I could actually even remember what they sounded like. So my number 10 is not one of those, because this is Black Swans and Wormhole Wizards, which I do always want to call Black Holes and Worm something else's. But there you go. This is Joe Satriani. And you can tell that because it looks like basically any Joe Satriani album under the sun to some extent. And to some extent, it also sounds like any Joe Satriani album after a certain period in the world. That doesn't mean to say that I don't like it. I put it on this afternoon and I thought, yeah, this is Satch done well. Not all Satch albums are phenomenal. They do kind of vary in excitement levels. I think sometimes when he tries to do something different, that's when it doesn't necessarily work. But then when he does nothing different, people quite rightly say he's done nothing different. Do you know? So, but if you like kind of, I don't know, hummable melodies, because that's what they are, he's basically writes songs with a singer in mind and then just doesn't employ a singer. So he plays the vocal melody
That's
on the
exactly what
guitar.
it is. Yep, that's
And it
exactly.
works for me. It's not challenging stuff. I think George, when we were chatting about Satch at one point on a chat thing somewhere, said that it's music to tap your toe to. I think that's a little harsh, but I kind of get it. I like to tap my toes, so I'm okay with that. Number 9 for me, this is Phenomena with Blind Faith. This is the kind of band or project that was formed by Tom and Mel Galley. Obviously, Mel from Whitesnake, the latter, who he had died unfortunately by 2008, and his brother revived the project. They've done a few of these albums with a lot of big name singers um, throughout the years, and I know that kind of superstar guest star cameo albums are a bit ten a penny these days. I mean, it's almost quite tiresome when you see them, and that's a shame because some of them are quite good, but you tend to see these sort of multi-cast albums. Some people do them really well. We'll come to that later on. Others don't. Phenomena were kind of their first. They were one of the sort of first things that were doing this kind of thing, and they got decent names. On this album, you've got people like Mike DeMeo from Riot. You've got Rob Marathi, who spent at least 6 seconds in Saga, but his solo stuff is worth checking out. Tony Martin from Black Sabbath. You've got Ralph Sheepers. You've got Chris Uzi from Heartland. You've got Steve Overland from FM. Terry Brock from Strange Ways. Robin Beck. And this is a clever album in the sense that it kind of, the songs are tailored to the singer, and yet it was an album from start to finish. It's not just kind of like, well, it's Tony Martin. Here's the Sabbath song. There's an element of that, but it's better than that. And I still really like this, I have to say. Number 8 for me is, yes, Simon.
When the first two, maybe, Phenomena album came out, there was a really big push, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Certainly here in the UK, wasn't there? Really big push.
I think when on the first couple, I mean, there was lots of Whitesnake guys involved. There was Cozy Powell. You had Glenn Hughes singing on a lot of the music as well, and they evolved from there into, it was meant to kind of be a kind of regular band project thing. I mean, they got the front page of Kerrang on the back of the first album when really, I think, before anyone really even knew what it was. I was buying Kerrang every week at that point, and I picked it up and thought, what the hell is this? But the cover art was cool and all that kind of stuff. And it's a shame that it became so irregular after that. And I think because it wasn't always the same people that were involved, it kind of got a little bit sneered at, as a lot of these kind of things do. But as I say, they've maintained a standard for me right across. There was one more that came after that as well. And it's also really good.
There
So
was a time, though, when you couldn't move for reading about Phenomena.
yeah.
It felt like.
It also doesn't help that the first 3 albums, especially, have been reissued at least 75 times.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, there's versions with bonus tracks, there's remastered versions, there's a box set, there's the box set with bonus tracks, there's the compilation. I think actually, I forget the singer's name, went back and re-recorded some of them after the fact, and you're like, it's even got the right typeface for Phenomena, so you reckon it must be kind of approved. It's one of those things where you think that first album is quite revered, so let's just kind of continue to talk about that first album a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the first one is clearly the best, but you had like Ray Gillen is on like what, the third one, if
I think the third one, yeah.
Yeah,
so you got Lee Small and various things involved along the way as well. There's lots of really big names and lots of not quite so A-list, and I don't mean that in terms of talent. I mean that in terms of the bands that they are involved with outside of Phenomena. And once it started to tail away into, I mean, the names that I read out there, Tony Martin, Black Sabbath, but he's not the Black Sabbath singer, not even one of the two of them for many people. You've got guys like Steve Overland, Chris Uzi, Terry Brock, Robin Beck, not guys, girls as well. These are as good singers as you'll come across anywhere, but they've never quite made that massive breakthrough into the kind of those kind of territories. And people therefore kind of look at these albums and just go, it's another one of those albums. They're really not. They're all really good. But there you go. So number 8 for me, this is Lucifer Was with the Crown of Creation. This is basically a one-man thing with lots of people. Tora Engen is the guy that kind of masterminds this. And it's a kind of, I mean, to call it a symphonic prog album really sells it wrong because it isn't symphonic prog. It's a progressive hard rock album with an orchestra that runs all the way through it. And it was written in that sense where it's all meant to work together. These were not kind of retrofitted. It's not like one of these projects where they record some of their old songs and then go and get an orchestra and say, do you know what, let's put a few chords in here and Bob's your uncle, we've got a classical album. This is a real showpiece. It really feels like it should be on the stage. It's dramatic. All the songs have little synopses on the back and various things. It's really, really good. It's a mood album. This was one of the ones that I listened to a lot back in 2010. And when I looked back at my list over the last couple of weeks, I did kind of think, now I remember really being impressed with that. How does it go again? And that's just because I think it is a little bit of one of those albums where you have to be in the mood for it. You have to kind of think, I need to sit down, I'm going to listen to it, I'm going to do nothing else, I'm going to concentrate on it. And I need something that's overblown and grandiose. But when you're in the mood for that, it's really very, very good. So I still like that a lot too. I still like everything.
That one was really different than their earlier ones because the earlier ones are just, I have a bunch of their early stuff and it was basically like Black Sabbath meets Jethro Tull. It's like these really kind of bluesy, heavy rock riffs with flute all over the place and then mellotron and a little Hammond organ. And they're very good. I mean, the band is great. Yeah. It's like, they still, I think they put out something like within
There
the
was one
last
that there was one that came after that. I think maybe about 3 or 4 years after, and then there's been nothing since. And I
yeah, it's
bought
been
that
a
one as
while.
well, and it's okay. I still like it, but it's not to the standard of this one
Yeah.
for me. And there's been nothing after that that I'm aware of for a long,
Yeah.
long time.
And there, it's one of those weird bands that they've been around since the early 70s, but like they never recorded
Yeah,
anything until like the late 80s. Really
yeah,
weird.
very strange history, and they played hundreds of gigs whilst releasing no music,
Yeah.
which is unusual, shall we say? Okay, so my number 7 is Jackdaw 4 with the Eternal Struggle for Justice. Probably one of the lesser known bands on my list. This is basically, I mean, it was a band, but Willie Dowling, who was in the Grip, for anyone that remembers them, he was in the Wild Hearts for his summer holidays one year, basically. He was there, recorded a couple of songs, played some shows, and decided it wasn't a good idea. So he formed Honeycrack with CJ Wildheart. They were a great band, one of the best things to come out of the Wild Hearts, in my humble opinion. And then he's done Jackdaw 4. He's currently doing some solo stuff. He's got some new music on the way. He has written music for the revamped Spitting Image that was on TV or online or streaming a couple of years ago, which is a kind of satirical political puppet show. Not sure if that translates very well, but okay. He's done theme tune work on TV and various things. He's one of these guys that's always working. He's always in demand. I think he tours with Doctor Hook these days as well. So he's kind of, absolutely, he's kind of working all the time. And he's just underappreciated. If you like kind of intelligent pop music that's kind of a bit like XTC or something like that, that's what this is really. But you've also got to bear in mind that he's quite political and he doesn't mind if you know it. In fact, he would rather you did. Back about like his politics. So there you go. Okay, number 6, Ainsley Lister with Equilibrium. We did a show 2 weeks ago called Turn That Shit Off. Okay, and it was all those albums that your family go, this is not one of those albums. This is one of those albums that my family go, Dad, 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 go and put on Ainsley Lister. It's really good. Okay. This is a very commercial sounding kind of blues rock album. He co-headlined It Bites the year before, or maybe the year of this. This was where I bought the album. I'd never heard of him. We turned up. We were kind of like, this guy can play. He can sing. He writes tight songs. He's done some bluesier stuff since. I actually prefer it when he keeps it quite simple and just upbeat and really just throws out the choruses. That's what this is. I had to retire this album for a while. It was played that much in this house. It was one of those ones where you had to go, I'm going to have to hide this for a few months. Otherwise, I'm going to end up hating it.
I
You
want to
know?
do that.
Um, so number five, this would probably, would it be my number one now? It would be my joint number one. I'm going to cop out with that. This is the Pineapple Thief. And this is Someone Here Is Missing. Okay. I meant to bring it through, but I don't. I remember Ken laughing at it. Okay, this chap on the front is covered in post-it notes. Okay, when I saw them on this tour, they had a carrier bag. I mean, a carrier bag, a Tesco bag, filled with these post-it notes. Okay, people were buying deluxe vinyl versions and T-shirts and all these kind of things. I think it was my daughter that asked the guy, "What's in the bag?" He said, "Oh, it's the post-its off the album." So me and her raked through it for about 10, 15 minutes and we found the one that has the album title on it. And I have that sitting in my living room.
Nice. All right.
Which I really quite like. Storm Thorgerson cover as well, so I like that too. But the album is great. This is really where the Pineapple Thief started to become what they are now, which is a kind of melancholic progressive rock band that aren't really prog rock at all. I really like them a lot, and I listened to this again this week as I have them all, and this really stands up. Bruce Seward is hugely underrated, although thankfully he is beginning to get a little bit more notice these days, which I like a lot. Number four, this is Black Bonzo with the Guillotine Drama. And this was one that I can hand on heart tell you that I don't think I've listened to since 2010. And it's number four in my list. And I put it on this week and I thought, yeah, it's all right. And I don't know if that's because I now have the connotations of where they went, because they turned into Gin Lady, a different band name, same band, directly after this album. And I liked the next one, their debut Gin Lady album. And then the one after that, which I forget the name of, sounded like The Doors, which to me is pretty much like, Run for the Hills. This here is kind of more like Uriah Heep. It's kind of got that vintage rock sound. It's heavy on the organ and all that kind of stuff. And it's got a really great feel and a really great atmosphere. And I wish that they'd continued on in that path personally. And it's maybe tainted me from the album. It is one that I would probably drop out of my top 10 now if I was to go back and re-rank these. And interestingly, I would with this too. And this is Orphaned Land, the never-ending way of Or Warrior, with a capital OR at both ends of that word for some reason. I'm not really sure why. And I don't know why it doesn't really connect with me in the same way. They're a kind of, well, they're not a kind of, they were an Israeli heavy progressive rock band that were multicultural in the sense that they tried to go across all the different religious divides, which I'm all for. And I mean, some of their artwork is challenging. They sent a little sign thing out here with lots of kind of take it as you want it kind of artwork out there, which is dangerous for guys from the part of the world that they're from. And there's a lot to be admired here, and it's clever and it's intricate. And I put it on these days, and it kind of goes for the album before and the album after. And they don't seem to have the same impact. They bring Middle Eastern kind of vibes into things. It doesn't. Time is a strange thing as well. There was them, and there was Mirath and various things about this kind of time. And a scene that was called Oriental Metal, which confused me because it's not the Orient at all. But somebody
Right,
will tell
exactly.
me
Yeah.
my geography is all wrong, but that's fine to me. They come from the Middle East. The Orient is somewhere else. And I got heavily into it at that point. And Orphan Land, now I go back and listen to it and think it's a bit more obvious than I thought. I think I was maybe a little bit caught up in the, oh my God, it's also different. And I listen to it now and I kind of go, it's not really. It's good though. It is good. Number two, Van den Pla, The Seraphic Clockwork. What a band. What a band. What an album. They really don't put a foot wrong right across the whole thing. I've got a massive box set over here with all the albums that I took this out of because I went and bought that because it's got all the bonus tracks and all that kind of stuff. Because they're phenomenal. They don't put a foot wrong right across the whole catalogue. This is album number 7. They are fully formed by this stage. They sound like Van den Pla. Early albums kind of have influences from elsewhere, but by this stage, they sound like nobody else. They've got Andy Kuntz as their singer, who is just phenomenal. He's got so much expression. He's got so much gravitas, but he's melodic and he's powerful, but he's nuanced. He's fantastic. And Stefan Lill must be one of prog's most underrated guitarists. The guy's never spoken about. But the stuff he pulls away on stuff like this, phenomenal. that was my number two, and it stays there, kind of my number three, because I said a joint number one, but I'm cheating as always. My number one then would probably still be my number one now, which is Victims of the Modern Age. This is Star One. This is my favourite Arjen Lucassen project. I like most of the stuff that he puts out. It's always very good. There are no compromises on anything that he ever does, really. But Star One just kind of really hit the nail on the head for me. They are a progressive metal band that don't just follow all the progressive metal tropes. There's much more melody, and yet there's growly vocals from Dan Swano on here. They are singable, but it's not throwaway. I really like them, and I always have. And I listened to this again this week, and I still remember every note of it, just about every word of it. I'm not a lyrics guy, but when you've got a vocal lineup that is Dan Swano, you've got Floor Jansen on there, you've got Russell Allen on there, and it really struck me as I was listening to this how many albums over the past maybe 20, 30 years Damien Wilson has been a part of that are just so high up on my lists from all of these years that we've covered. The guy just never misses. He's absolutely phenomenal. Then you've got that guy, Tony Martin, again, turning up on the bonus tracks. This is great stuff. It's really good. And if you like kind of heavy, melodic, progressive, you really need to listen to Star One. They've only got 3 albums. I mean, the first one was something like, I don't know, 10 years before this one. I think there was 8 years after this until the most recent. But don't miss. They never miss. So yeah, I looked at my 10. I'm happy with all of the 10. I still like them all. My top 5 is still pretty set in stone. I would push Jackdaw 4 up. I would probably happily lose the bottom 5 for other albums that came out this year. But we'll come to that in a second.
Yeah, that to me is the most interesting thing of this is trying to figure out what would change, right? So, all right, so I didn't pull my CD, so I've got I'm going to go use the Prezi thing right now, and let's start at my number 10 back in 2010, which is, let's see, the magic of Prezi. Will it work? Will it work? Let's see. Are we going to work? Why is it not doing it? I know something's wrong here because
It's
my
not flipped around.
it's not flipping me around. Yeah, so it's
Around. This is why I've never done Prezi, because I know that a lot of the guys on the
it's
talks
worked before for
use
me. I
it.
don't know why it's not working right now.
Me and technology, the fact that I'm on this screen is enough.
For me, work-wise, Prezi is so very 2010. Ooh, let's do some Prezi. Let's do some CPD on Prezi. Come on, let's do that.
Edgy, you are edgy, Simon. Edgy
Let's
that one.
let's not do that with all that other stuff and shit and stuff. No, no. Let's
I'm
just
gonna try
round it
this
up.
again. Let's see what
Don't
happens.
feel pressurised into show and tell just because myself and Simon were organised. I mean, Simon even went and raked out all his CDs, Pete. Come on.
I know, I know. All right, let's bear with me a second here. If this doesn't work this time, I'm going to give up. So
Should we fill and talk about Emmerdale Farm and stuff like that?
there you
It's
go.
not even called Emmerdale Farm anymore, Simon. It's just called
Oh,
Emmerdale. Come on, get with it.
Jesus.
There we
Oh, Pete,
go.
we're all the way round. It's working.
There we go. All right. So my number
Yeah.
10 back in 2010 was Isan After. Of course, Isan, the former and maybe still, I guess, lead singer for Emperor. This is one of his solo albums. What I'm going to do to make this fun, because I think I'm not sure if everybody did this. Most of us did this. Wrote some kind of little blurb after each of our picks back in 2010. So my blurb was like, once again, the former Emperor frontman proves what a virtuoso he is. Yes. All right. Cool. Yeah, I re-listened to this, and I honestly don't think I listened to this within a year of it coming out. I don't think I ever listened to it again. And in revisiting it, this would not be in my top 10. It's good, but I have found initially when Isan left Emperor and started doing his own thing, I was very, very into his solo albums. I found for me they don't quite hold up so well, and I'm not really all that interested in them anymore. I would rather listen to the early Emperor albums, right? They're kind of progressive, but they're still very raw black metal. He would, as each solo album came out, he would kind of lessen up on the black metal stuff. But I find that this just doesn't hold my interest as much as it used to, which is, is what it is, right? All right, so that's that. So let's go find another one, shall we? My number 9 is, all right, come on, let's go. Here we go. My number 9 was Helmet of Gnats, High Street. So this is a U.S. fusion prog instrumental band. They have a great catalog. You know, George Lemay, Eric Porter, myself are big fans of this band. Back then, I said jazz prog fusion doesn't get any better than this. This album's got, I think it's 4 really long songs, like 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. In re-listening to this again, because I haven't listened to this one in a while, I still think it's really, really good. I think the songs are a little too long, and I think it gets a little spacey for me in spots, but the playing is still amazing. There's just some great guitar work and keyboard work on here. It's still really, really good. I think I like some of their other albums a little bit more, though, but it's still really, really good. All right, yes,
Is there a reason they've got a comedy name?
say that again.
Is there a reason that they've got a comedy band name?
I
Helmet
have
of
no idea.
Nuts. I mean,
Yeah.
that's there are a few bands out there that have arrived in the last 14 years. They were older than that. I know that. That just prove all the good band names have gone. That's terrible. What a terrible band
The
name.
Helmet of Gnats. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Yeah, I'm not a fan. But the band is really, really good. So yeah, I don't know. And that's a really cool cover. I always thought the cover
Yeah,
of that.
I like the cover.
So yeah. This would rank higher for me if I were to
Okay.
do this today. Or well, it would rank higher in my top 10. It may not even make my top 10. That's the thing. Because if we were just sticking to ranking the 10 that we did back then, I would have lots of movement in my list. But in looking, I mean, Steven, you just talked about Star One. I had that as number 11. That would certainly be in my top 10 if I were to do this today. And there's lots of other things. I'm looking at my list. I'm like, God, what number 23? What? And we'll get to that when we go around again. But yeah, I just no, seriously, because I mean,
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
no, I
you
agree.
have stuff that clicks with you when you do these,
Yeah,
and then you kind of forget about it and you move on to other things, or your taste change a little bit. And then I'm amazed at some of the stuff that's in my top 40, top 50, and I'm like, oh no, that's a top 10. What was I thinking back then? But I was a wee lad back in 2010, and I guess I couldn't be trusted there. All right, so let's move on to number 8, right? Yes, number 8. Where are we? Where are we? There we go. My number 8 back then was Spock's Beard 10 or X, however you want to call it. So this was the band still with Nick DiVirgilio on drums and lead vocals. For my money, this is the best of the Nick DiVirgilio as lead singer era. My words back then were best release of the post-Morse era.
yeah,
Until they go and get Ted Leonard to join the band and
yeah.
become their lead singer, and Nick moves on to Circus Soleil and all this other kind of stuff. Because I think that the couple of albums that they did with Nick on lead vocals are pretty good to very good in this instance. I think they've done stuff since then that is way better than this era, in my opinion. But great
Could
band.
we please
Love
get
Sparks.
some new music from them?
Yeah, it's been a while, right? When was that last?
Long time. Long
Six
time. Don't
years?
know.
6 years?
I think it's maybe even longer than that now.
Jesus, that's
Long time.
crazy, crazy, crazy. All right, next. All right, let's see. What are we at here? Ah, ah. All right, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? My number 6 was Van den Plas, The Seraphic Clockwork. One of the best progressive metal bands around. Release another stunner. Is that 6? 7. Sorry. Thank you, Stephen. Number 7. Yeah, this is everything Stephen said. This is a terrific album. I think in the years since this has come out, I've liked this even more. They have never released a bad album. This, to me, probably a top 3 for them, I think.
Straight up there.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it's right up there. This would
Right.
certainly be higher on my list if I were to do this all over again this year. So yeah, terrific, terrific album. If you're a progressive metal fan, you're not listening to Van den Plas, you need to. Just they're one of the best. And they're so original sounding, just really, really great. All right, number 6. Okay, number 6. All right, let's see. Let's get this. Bear with me, folks. All right, where is it? Okay, my number 6 back then was U.S. technical death metal band Decrepit Birth, Polarity. What I said about it back then, crushing technical death metal, their best yet. And that is the case. In re-listen, I haven't listened to Decrepit Birth in years. And I re-listened to this and I'm thinking, yeah, it's pretty impressive, but it's just so technical and so pummeling. There's probably a reason why I don't listen to a ton of this type of thing anymore because it's too much. As I've gotten older, I tend to favor certain extreme metal bands that I still really like a lot, but a lot of bands like this who come on, they're like, we can play faster, we can play more technical than everybody else. After a while, it's just like, and I'm just like, okay, I can appreciate it on a technical level, but this
Yeah.
probably wouldn't be in my top 10 now, all these years later. Number 5 will be Frog Cafe Baitless Edge. Some of you may be watching, who the hell is Frog Cafe? They are a band from Long Island, New York, who I actually became pretty good friends with there for a while. And they really haven't done anything in a million years. They used to be a Frank Zappa cover band, and then they decided to do all original material that encompasses like prog and jazz and fusion and avant-garde and jam band. They got like trombone and guitar and violin and keyboards. A very unique band, very fun band. And I obviously rated this very highly back then, number 5. Are there no limits to what these guys can do? I think not. In re-listening to this, it's probably a bit more avant-garde than I thought back then. It's fun. There's good stuff on here. It's not an easy listen. I think I can still appreciate it. I still like it, but I think my tolerance for this type of music all these years later has waned a little bit. I still like it. I don't know if this would make top 10 like now. It's still really good. And that what they did is done really, really well. I think I've changed a little bit of my listening habits, and I think that's why doing an exercise like this, you can really see how you've changed, musically speaking, and what you perceive and how you appreciate things.
That was my number 11
It
in
was
Iowa.
okay, yeah. So you know what I'm talking
You
about,
sent
right?
that to me for review, and I can hand on heart say that I've never listened to it since.
Yeah, there
That's
you go.
no reflection of whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's the sort of thing that I can listen to for review, go, man, they're great at that. And know in my heart of hearts, I'm never going to go back to it.
Yeah, yeah. My number 4 is Orphan Land, The Never Ending Way of Ore Warrior. And again, they got 3 or 4 different covers for this album, so it's this is a band that, man, when they first came out, everybody was talking about these guys. If you were like a progressive metal fan, you got to listen to Orphan Land. They're so good. I remember Duncan Glenday was like, Pete, Orphan Land, album of the year. You got to check it out. I'm like, okay, great. And I bought it and I really liked it. And I think, didn't they have like one before this that was really popular? And
Mabul.
yeah, Mabul, yes, that. So I got into them with that album. And then with this album, it came out and I was really into it at first. And then I just decided that I don't really enjoy this band.
Mm.
There's way too much going on. There's just all these ethnic influences and elements that just seems like they don't belong. The constant back and forth between the clean vocals, the growling vocals, the vocals in other languages, the chanting, the choruses, the weird instruments. That's heavy. It's not heavy. And I honestly, they put out other stuff since then, and I don't even go near it. I haven't listened to this band since probably 2010, 2011. And I know lots of people love them. They're just not for me anymore. It's just too much. It's just like fireworks going off outside my brain, and I just can't do it. So yeah. Number 3. Yes,
Yes,
Simon.
Simon.
Stephen, honestly, I was listening to Orphan Land. You gave Frog Cafe a big 5 stars, Stephen Reid.
Yeah, that's
Five
it's
stars, and you've not
interesting.
listened to it since.
Yeah, it's
Surely
interesting
five stars
because
suggests that it's,
reviewing stuff,
movingly brilliant.
as you know, or maybe you don't because you don't bother writing reviews these days. Reviewing albums is an interesting thing to do when it's stuff that you're sent. I have a pile of discs up here. This is, as I showed Simon the other day in a picture when we communicate outside of this. I have a I need to listen to these CDs section sitting here for a variety of reasons, for shows, for review, because I bought them, because I want to, whatever it may be. I have about, I don't know, 25 discs sitting up there that Pete has been kind enough to send me for review, that people have been kind enough to send him. That doesn't mean to say that I have the vaguest idea what's going to be in that review box when it arrives. So you have to just take it at the face value of what you do. Yeah, you go through, and out of the 30 or so I was sent, you go, oh, I know who these two or three are, and that's exciting. And you tend to start with those you think will be easier to review and excited to hear it. And then you work your way through stuff that you have no concept of what it's going to be. And sometimes you have to try and work out, is this really good for what it is? And back then I thought Frog Cafe were outstanding at what they were doing. So therefore I gave it a really positive review. And to me, a 5-star review equals, if you resonate with anything that I've written, you have to listen to this. There's no two ways about it. And I would give out very few. And it still hit number 11 because in my heart of hearts, it's not really for me. But that doesn't mean to say that it's not pretty awesome. And I still think that it's really, really good. But going back, and I mean, I haven't listened to it since. I will now go back and listen to it again because Simon has complained. But I know it's not really for me. But that doesn't mean to say that it doesn't deserve a slot. I put it outside my top 10 on purpose that year as well because I can't hand on heart say it's a top 10 album for me.
Yeah.
But I stand by the review of it. George asked us an interesting question. I'm going off at a tangent here. When we reviewed our albums from this year on In the Prog Seat, when we gave our top 5 that we were a rundown, he was astute enough, as you are too, Simon, to notice that my reviews were inconsistent because I had given an album that I had further down on my list a higher score than the Haken album from this year. And he asked a pertinent question, which was, do you never go back and edit your scores? And the answer to that is no, because I think a review is a snapshot in time. It's very much how I felt about it then. You try and be as honest as you can. You try and give them as many listens as you can before it becomes irrelevant to review a certain album after too long. And that doesn't mean to say you always get it right, even for yourself. So Haken at the time, it hit me hard. I really liked it. And then I went and reviewed it. But over the next few months, it just became an album I couldn't stop listening to. I had to listen to it more and more and more. And at the end of the year, when you rank all these things, you go, that is my favourite album from this year. Reading my review, it's one of my favourite albums from the year. But I stand by what I thought, because at that point, it's what I thought.
Yeah. Well, kind of like what I said before. I mean, I had the Frog Cafe at number 5 because in 2010 it blew my socks off, right?
Yeah.
All these years later, I still think it's really good. I think my listening, my what I like and what is special to me now has changed a little bit. And I think that style of music I don't really love as much as I used to. Doesn't mean I don't still think it's really good because it is. And I respect those guys and what they've done. And it's still, I consider a really good album. It's just, it's not something that I put on anymore.
I think as well, when you're doing exercises like this or writing a review, that is different from getting up on a Sunday morning and thinking, what will I listen to today? It's a different event to some extent.
Yeah.
Do you know? So yeah, I am always aware that when you review stuff, there are opportunities for people to go, but that's bullshit now. Hey, oh, it wasn't bullshit when I wrote it. Well, it maybe was, but not to me. People can read them and go, bullshit. Fair enough.
But, I mean, case in point, again, well, I'm sure we'll touch on this, but on my list in 2010 at number 32 was Haken Aquarius. That absolutely would be in the top 5 if I were to do this today and look back at 2010 without question. So again, what was I thinking back then? I don't know. Is this just a band that grew leaps and bounds with me since then? I mean, I consider that a great album in their catalog, right? And so I don't know.
Anyway. Good question, Simon.
Yeah, it is. Oh, absolutely it is. It's weird how, I mean, this, for anybody watching who thinks that reviewing albums on a regular basis is easy, whether you're writing, doing the written review or whether you're talking about them on a video, it's very difficult. And it's just, we're all constantly like getting torn between, well, I can only give this 3-4 listens and I got to move on to 5 other things. And knowing that, well, maybe my perception on that first, second, third listen will or won't change if I were to hold on to it for another 2 weeks and give it 5 more spins when I really don't have the luxury of doing that. Right.
Yeah.
So and that's why, I look at this list from 2010 and I'm like, there's a lot of shit that's on here that was really far down in my ranking for the year. But I've listened to a ton since then, and I love these albums way more than I did back
Yeah.
then. And stuff that I loved back then has dropped significantly. It's weird,
When
right?
we started doing these shows, or when I started to be part of the channel, I did that kind of self-eating exercise of trying to work out what I said about things before so that I could show some level of consistency. And I only did that for a short space of time because I realized that what I was really doing was trying to convince myself that I was right back then. There are reviews that I've written that I go back and read now and genuinely think, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe they're shit, but even just the thought on the music, you just come to it and you read it again and you go, was that me that thought that? And I've had people quote things that I've written back to me and I genuinely kind of go,
Yeah.
did I do that?
Yeah.
Nah. You try your
Because
best, what you can do.
you also park your reviews as soon as you've sent them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Never go back to them unless
Next.
for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3. This is an interesting one because I looked at my ranking and thinking, how in the world did I have Black Country Communions at number 3? That's easy, my number 1. Easy now. And you think number 3, that's pretty damn good, right? A supergroup for the ages, impressive 70s style hard rock with a touch of blues. Yeah. But man, I went on after this came out. I listened to this album. Sometimes, these albums come out, you review them, you move on to the next year, and half the shit that you listened to the year before, you never listen to again. You don't go back to. Man, I love this band. I mean, it's Glenn Hughes, for crying out loud, Joe Bonamassa, and Jason Bonham and Derek Sherinian. But to me, this was the album of the year. Looking back now, I didn't think so back then. It was close, right? It was close, but yeah, terrific, terrific album. And number 2. Yeah, and this is pretty puzzling, but I guess back then I just fell in love with this album, and it's a really good album. And re-listening to where is it? Where is it? Here we go. Listening to Time to Be King by Masterplan all these years later, after originally saying a very close second. So it was almost my number 1. Power metal album of the year, Jorn Lande is back. So this is Roland Grapow from Halloween and Mike Turan on drums and Jorn Lande. And it's a really good album. I will admit, I don't think I've listened to this album in 10 years. But I remember at the time I was totally into it. And then I think for me, like once Jorn left the band again, I was like, I've lost interest. And that happens sometimes. You have a band you really like, you love the lineup, and then one of the guy you love the most leaves, and you're just kind of like, I'm not even gonna listen to the albums I like anymore because I'm just so upset that, whatever. But it's still really good. This would not be in the upper echelon of my top 10 if I were to do this all over today. And my number 1, this doesn't really surprise me because this band, I think, has, generally speaking, most of their releases over the last decade have ranked pretty high for me. And that is Enslaved, Axioma Ethica Odini, the Norwegian progressive black metal band. This is a pretty terrific album, and it's one of my favorites from them. It's not my absolute favorite, but it's the top 5 easy. And going back and listening to this again, it's still pretty amazing. And I can totally see why I put it at number 1. I wouldn't put it at number 1 if I was doing this today, but it would be easily in the top 5, maybe top 3. It's pretty damn spectacular. Again, if you like black metal and mixed with like Pink Floyd and Genesis prog rock stuff, and it's just wonderful stuff. I mean, this band really has never made a bad album. So yeah, those are my top of the 10. Cool. I'm back.
It's a bit odd
I
watching.
hate that. I wish they would fix
Yeah.
that shit. It's so annoying, It's like it's so annoying. So real quick, I wanted to call out some stuff that was down in the depths of my list that I can't comprehend why it wasn't higher. I had Star One at number 11, Nevermore, The Obsidian Conspiracy at number 12. That should have been higher. Borknagar Universal, Did anybody have Iron Maiden in their top 20 even? I had it at number 16. Camelot Poetry for the Poison. I mean, the one that, to me, the ones that really stuck out the most is Spiritual Beggars Return to Zero. I had a 23. That would easily today be a top 10 for me. What was it? And then the one we just mentioned, Haken. I had Triptychon in here. I had James Labrie, Dark Tranquility, Eloy. I mean, Blind Guardian, Ingve Malmsteen, all sorts of other stuff. But for me, I thought Overkill, it's like that would have definitely been higher, should have been higher. Ironbound is a great album. But, again, it's sometimes in a year where you listen to so many albums, you review so many albums, sometimes you get that top 10 or 20 set, and then you have this whole other list. And when you were dead set on, I got to put together a top 100 or a top 50, you just start throwing stuff in an order because how can you really truthfully rank 100 albums exactly how you really like them from that same year, right? It's one thing if we were to look back on, 1975 and rank our top 100 albums from 75 or a year that we know really, really well based on longevity and history. But it's really difficult when you really think about ranking 100 albums from the same year that you heard them all for the first time. And maybe you only heard them 3 or 4 times, if that, right? It's hard. It's really hard.
I've even found in recent years that you kind of get to that early December, mid-December point and think to yourself, shit, what have I not heard yet?
Yeah, and there's always
What do I
lots of
need
that.
to hear before I can put a list together and you start to cram. And invariably that means that things are put in the wrong place too. Or they are for me anyway. When you go back and look at them again, you kind of think, I don't even know that. But I listened to it maybe 3 times quickly and thought, wow, it's amazing. And then never caught up with it again. It's a strange concept.
It is.
Um,
It really is. And the whole thing of not hearing stuff in time, and even like, how many bands and artists release stuff after December 15th. And it's just like
yeah.
by then you've already put your list together. And then you're like, you get something like Peter Gabriel's album came out really late in the year. And most of us are kind of like, I've already put my fucking list together, right? How am I going to squeeze
Thanks,
this in, right?
Peter.
It's just like, And I've heard from plenty of people who are like, well, why don't you guys just do your top picks of the year like late January? And I'm like, because by January nobody gives a shit
Yes.
anymore about the year before.
And also by January, I'm listening to January music.
Yeah,
Or
it's like
trying to,
it's you close the door on it
especially
and you move on.
especially this year because it's been strangely front loaded. There's big acts putting out albums left, right, and centre in the first couple of months of the year, which is not necessarily normal either. Not that you can get your hands on physical copies in the UK. Let's not go there. Let's not go there. Um, yeah, Simon, you mentioned you would change things about. What would you change about?
I would only put FM's Metropolis in the top 10 at the expense of Man of War.
Okay.
Well,
I also, as I noted in the bits above what I actually said, I had bought Star One at that point and did go on to listen to it and probably would remove Avantasia for that.
Wow. Okay.
your assessment of Avantasia was spot on. That was my jump off point with them too, strangely enough. I looked at the rest of my list and I pulled out 5 albums that, strangely enough, I've said the top 5 that I would choose now from my top 10 would stay there. And yet somehow I've got 10 albums here. Okay. 5 of which made my list and 5 which didn't even make the list, but I've listened to a lot. I'll be quick. Haken. Okay. Pete's covered it. Great band. I'm into them much more now than I was back then. Still loved it then, but it just would rank much higher. Simon's just covered this one. That's Metropolis by FM. Why I didn't rank that higher than number 17, I have no idea. I mentioned Mirath earlier from that Oriental metal scene. This is Desert Call. I would rank this higher than Orphaned Land now. I didn't at the time. Orphaned Land felt much more kind of dangerous and crazy. I like Glider a lot. This is Yesterday,
Oh
Today, and
yeah, that's pretty
Tomorrow.
good. Yeah.
Irish rock band that I've never had enough notice. Bat Canane was the main guy. Really, really good. They are no more. I wish they were. And this is Voodoo 6. This is Fluke. I listened to this a shit ton after the turn of that year. I went to see them a few times. And interesting what hindsight, because in their number was a certain bassist called Tony Newton, who's now in KK's Priest,
Yep.
and a certain guitarist called Richie Faulkner, who's now in Judas Priest.
Yep.
And they also worked together prior to Voodoo 6 in a band called Dirty Deeds that used to go out and support Iron Maiden and various things like that. It's interesting that even with that kind of history, Black Horse history, people are still not talking about this band. If you want kind of heavy, bluesy, big riffs, Luke Purdy was the singer at this point. Great singer. Voodoo Six were your band.
Stephen,
But
I know Davey Rimmer from Uriah Heep and Richie played in one other a band together before they both got in their respective bands. Is that any of those bands you just mentioned?
I don't think so. No, um, I don't think he's in either of those. I would need to check that up. These are one Voodoo Six are one of these bands that I mean I've got all their albums, but it's difficult to find lots of information about them online. Strangely enough, but yeah, I knew them from Dirty Deeds. They opened for Maiden in the Blaze years, so I saw them in the Barrowlands. And I'm going to get this wrong, but I think Tony Newton used to go out and do sound for Maiden and various things like that. And they used to come back together and do these bands in their spare time more than anything else. And I saw Voodoo Six in places like King Tut's Wawa Hut and the church in Dundee, tiny little venues. And it's great to have seen. I saw Tony Newton play McKay's Priest recently. These guys deserve the breaks. It is nice to see some of these guys that have just continued to knock on the door finally break it down. So
Yeah.
that's nice. It doesn't happen very often. But albums that didn't even make my top whatever list of the year, I've listened to Karnataka, The Gathering Light, an awful lot. I like Freedom Rock by Heat. That would have been in my top 10 now. I like, take that out of this horrible thing, Seventh Wonder.
Oh, great album. Yeah.
Okay, that's The Great Escape. That's a great album. Such a good album. Never featured anywhere. I like Mojo by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And as I said just before we came on and started recording, back in 2010, I viewed Alter Bridge as my daughter's band. They were one of these newfangled bands. And yeah, with the history of the band that they morphed out of, I wasn't interested. I was aware and I'd heard them and thought, yeah, they're okay. Well, hindsight, it's one of my favourite bands of the kind of modern era, it has to be said. They knock out the park every time. And AB3 is one of those. And the last one is The Union. This is what Luke Morley did when Thunder were on hiatus, when Danny Bowes didn't want to do it. And he played in this. And it's not like Thunder, but you can tell it's Luke Morley that's writing the songs. They are bluesier, they are kind of less kind of stadium rock. And they've got a guy called Pete Shoulder singing with them. One of the best vocalists that nobody's ever heard of. Guy's outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. I only really know that he did the two albums with Union and a solo thing, which was very kind of low key. What a singer, and we should all know his name. So these would all have featured somehow in my top 10, along with the 5 that I wouldn't remove.
I'm amazed that Seventh Wonder is not anywhere on my list. So I'm
Didn't
wondering if
make
that
my
came
list
out
either.
late in the year and I just missed it because I love all their albums and I would think, and that's a great album. I'm like, how
That's
is
one
that
of my
on my
favourites of
list?
theirs.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't know if it was a late year release or not, because I don't know. It's one of those ones that as I went through my list, I thought, where is it? Where's that?
Yeah.
That should be on my list, and it's not there.
Oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
somehow I have Accept Blood of the Nations at 66.
Yeah, it was sitting at number 21 for me, and I've listened to that
Yeah,
much more than stuff in my top 10.
that should be
Circus
way
Paralyzed,
higher.
yeah,
Way higher.
loads of stuff.
Angra Aqua is at like number 65. I'm like, what? I'm like, yeah, there's some craziness going on there. I don't know. 13 years ago, I'm not sure what was going on. We were drinking some kind of weird Kool-Aid or something. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, I mean, we've covered an awful lot of ground here between top tens, other albums, how we review things, why we review things, why we get it wrong. In the comments, I'm intrigued to see what people think of 2010 in general. I mean, lots of people were making lists and all these various things, so hopefully people have access to what they thought from that year. But more importantly, what they think about it now that's different. And that's what's been lots of fun doing this, is discovering just how wrong I was when I thought I was right back in 2010.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And what I'll do is in the down in the comments section, I will post a link to all of our picks from 2010 on the webzine. You know what's really weird, guys? I'm like looking through these lists and I'm seeing these names of writers and I'm like, who are these people?
Yeah, it's terrible, but I must
How
have
many
had.
how many did you see on this list? I'm going down. I'm like, I don't remember who this person is. It's like it's someone who came and wrote for a couple of months and then they disappeared. I'm like, I don't remember half of these people. I'm like, Jesus, this is
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, that's yeah. I must have. I looked through them and kind of thought, I wonder what they wrote. Who were they?
Yeah. But then again, Simon Bray, Steven Reid, Peter Pardo, Mike Popke, and John Newdorf are still going strong on SOT all these years later, right? The core of the Sea of Tranquility writing team.
Yes, and I will emphasise that everybody's contribution has been, well received, and we thank them for it. But it's fascinating when you look at some of the names and just think, wow, that was a short period of time, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, Stephen, you want to give everybody a taste of what's happening next time?
Yes, we haven't done a ranking of the songs on a classic album for quite some time. Too long, in fact. Therefore, that's what we're going to do in 2 weeks' time. And we are going to do a band that we were requested, actually. Somebody contacted us on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it these days, that nonsense, and suggested that why don't we do a show on Dio? Okay, then, we're going to rank the songs on Holy Diver.
Yes. All right. Get away. Awesome. That should be pretty. You know what? Sometimes it's an album that I know so well, but then again, you come down to like, that should be really easy. And then I'm like, but do we want to kind of take it out of context and all that?
Yeah.
That's the hard part. That's the hard part.
It's ranking on albums like that. It's ranking things low because it makes it sound like you don't like them, and you do.
Yes,
I do.
And God forbid we rank the hits low. Can't do that.
Or too high. You think the commercial shit's the best stuff? I don't know what to think. Stop it. No.
I know, right? Crazy stuff. So anyway, thanks for watching. Again, feel free to, the link will be below if you want to go take a gander at some of the many things that came out in 2010. Give us how you would rank them, your top 10, all these years later. Nuka's ready to do the ranking. She's like, yes, Daddy, let's do it. And maybe you'll have an easier time than we did, or, maybe you'll look back and say, what I thought back then is exactly what I still think now. I don't know. I find that hard to believe, but you never know, right? You never know. So anyway, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Hopefully next time I got a brand new Guinness glass, and I'm going to have a little preview of what I'm going to drink next time. I hope to have an ice cold Guinness in my new Guinness glass, and I'm not going to use it until then. So stay tuned for that. What Guinness is he going to drink? Who knows? There's not that many to choose from, but I'll pick one of them. So until then, for Simon Bray and Steven Reid, I'm Pete Pardo. Have a good one, everybody. See you soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and be back in 2 weeks for the UK Connection. Till then, bye-bye.